Thank you very much, Sergey. And at the very beginning, I want to thank you also personally for inviting me to St. Petersburg, because it's a fascinating thing for me to be back in St. Petersburg after 11 years. The last time I was here, that was in 2013. I was president of the UN General Assembly. And I remember then also I was placed on a panel full of really knowledgeable experts to do with climate and sustainable development goals. And I felt really as a second-rate participant, and this reminds me, this feeling that I have right now, having heard these most thoughtful interventions, I reminisce on my feeling, oh my God, I'm not good enough when I'm not knowledgeable enough to participate in this panel. So I'm going to start off by asking a very simple question from my field of expertise, which is geopolitics and international relations. Everybody speaks about $100 billion that is needed, and now who's going to pay, and so on and so forth. Well, if I'm not mistaken, if the US dollar is a reserve currency of the world that can be essentially printed in infinite amounts, then the question is very easy. The answer is very easy. Well, the United States should print $100 billion and just pay for everything, because they can afford that if the US dollar is and will remain the global currency. Now, let's try and be slightly more realistic about the situation. We live in an era of a geopolitical recession. That's my theory, that geopolitical relations, just like the economy, are cyclical. And then you move from one cycle to another cycle. We are definitely in a very negative cycle when it comes to geopolitics. But the difference between economy and geopolitics is the geopolitical cycles tend to last much longer. So they're not years, they're probably decades. And hey, tough luck. For this reason or for that reason, we are in a midst of a geopolitical recession. And this is actually when some realpolitik thinking needs to be applied if we are going to move from where we are to where we're all hoping to be. Obviously, the best solution would be that the whole world sits together, realizes that we're all in this thing together, that we're all going to suffer as a result of undoing, and that we leave aside our divisions in other fields and, just be able to sit down and come to common solutions. That was the idea of the Sustainable Development Goals. When we were negotiating the Sustainable Development Goals, it was the assumption that the world will be working together. But it's not. And it's probably not going to be much better situation in the coming years. So what to do? My theory is that if multilateralism cannot be made to work, then try something smaller. Try minilateral approach. Try a subset of multilateral attitude. And, BRICS comes to mind as a very significant minilateral forum. And when I say minilateral, it's by no means mini if we are talking about BRICS. So actually working together within BRICS to try and harmonize your approaches despite the divergences in the economic cycles of different countries, and coming up with a way of financing technological transition emanating out of BRICS. Because let's not kid ourselves, when it comes to sustainable technologies, it's a big question, like who is it more advanced? Whether is it the traditional, all the developed economies of the political West, or, some of the BRICS countries. Well, if there is going to be a continued geopolitical competition around the world, which I think is likely, I think it is reasonable to expect competition in greening the world. Everybody needs to go green. Now, who are you going to call? who you're going to work with. BRICS, to me, sounds like potentially very potent address for addressing the needs of, first and foremost, the developing world when it comes to their transition to sustainability. And if you talk about BRICS, then you can also talk about how can one pay? And is it going to be 100 billion of what? Maybe 100 billion of something else, not necessarily dollars. Because as I see things developing in the future, the dollar has become more than a currency of reserve and choice. It had become a weapon in the geopolitical divisions and fights of today. So perhaps it's not the ideal currency, it's not the ideal unit to use. So that's my 10 cents to begin with, and thank you very much, Sergey, once again for giving me the floor.
Спасибо большое.
Yeah, well, if you want a one-word answer, it's yes. And if you want a two-word answer, it's a yes, but. And I think that the digitalization of finance is actually one of the most important technological transformations of our times, especially because of what I said earlier about the US dollar being used as a weapon in the wars, in the American wars of the 21st century. So going digital, I think, is an essential element of transition, not just transition to sustainability, of a transition to the world of the future, a more equitable world of the future. Now, I understand that central banks are working hard here in this country and in so many countries around the world in establishing digital currencies. I think digital currencies are going to be an important part of the solution. Now, crypto in general, I think it needs a lot more work to be able to regulate and harmonize and become like a staple, a financial staple of the future. So digital currencies, yes, of course. Cryptocurrencies, yes, but. And I could elaborate for a couple of more hours, but I don't think we have enough time today. I have a feeling that was directed at me, so I'm going to answer the question, if that's okay. International bodies, international organizations, let's take the United Nations, for instance. United Nations is actually a club. It's a club of its members. And asking the club to do something that is not in line with what the members want, it's a very tall order. I remember once someone famously said, because everybody's bashing the UN, well, why don't you do more here and more there? And so I heard somebody saying once, blaming the United Nations for all these, lack of action or something that needs to be done is like blaming the management of the Madison Square Garden for the poor performance of the New York Knicks. I mean, this is just a venue. It's a club. There has to be an action on behalf of the member states, understanding the geopolitical context and the geopolitical moment. And since our the panel name is from Dubai to Baku, from COP28 to COP29. Let me just extend it 10 years before. I attended COP18, and that was taking place in Doha, if I'm not mistaken. And I was the first president of the UN General Assembly that attended a COP meeting. And when I expressed my intention to participate, to talk about the newly founded idea that we get to the SDGs, I was dismissed at first by the organizers, not the Qataris, but the organization, but the COP, but the Conference of Parties, saying, we don't need diplomats there. It's our thing, it's ours, the experts. Like, you guys go and do things in the UN, these diplomatic things. We don't need diplomats at COP. Well, those were the days when things were easy. in the world. Now things are hard. Now all these things that we discussed, all these complications need to be resolved diplomatically in the UN and other international bodies. But the action's got to be by nations. It's got to be by countries. It's got to be by member states. It cannot be done by a UN bureaucracy who's there to serve everybody. Yes, from time to time you can make a clarion call, like the Secretary General is making, and calling for the summit of the future and all that. These are all important initiatives. But if the summit of the future, for instance, is to be anywhere near successful, it is the member states that need to show this commitment. And I'm very glad to hear what I heard today in terms of what Russia's plans and goals are and actions. That gives a lot of encouragement given Russia's significance in this, just as in most other things global.